child of day and the child of night despised each other. Two shadowy figures clash in an eternal battle. One strikes down upon the other. Their fight, born in the age of myth, has been passed down to humans. Caution stands radiant, holding a glowing weapon. He confronts a large horned demon and a smaller demon. He protects a faint figure standing behind him. The fight rages on. A building violently collapses, erupting in a massive cloud of dust and debris. The building shakes from a tremor. A thought echoes, referencing villains rotting in hell. Moros grins widely, his teeth on full display. A jester-like figure with glowing eyes stands triumphantly over the large, deflated white creature. He speaks of a dream of ascending to heaven. Police officers aim their handguns. One officer screams, his face filled with terror. Nearby, Jack watches the scene unfold from a car. Tuppen Schiller descends from the sky, standing on a massive sphere. He shouts, "Welcome to the Ralph Show." Caution is violently struck by the death ball, which erupts in an explosion of light and debris. A voice shouts for everyone to watch out. Moros vanishes inside a burst of smoke and energy. Ralph the Clown makes a framing gesture with his hands, shouting that this is exactly what he wanted. In the background, a smaller version of him stands triumphantly atop a colossal dark orb. A hand grips a pistol, trembling uncontrollably. Cassian trembles, aiming his gun. Moros sits atop a large, dark creature in the rubble. Moros glares down, his face illuminated by a faint glow from below. He holds an intense, wide-eyed expression and scoffs. A figure in a clown mask holds a maraca. The instrument crackles with pink energy. The figure's hand snatches the maraca. He twirls the instrument with a flick of his wrist. The jester fires a pin-shaped projectile of pink energy. The blast rockets toward its target. The jester holds a wide grin, his face detailed with a red clown nose and an elaborate costume. The character in the jester mask unleashes a fiery explosion, engulfing the hooded figure. Masked robbers, Jeff and Moros, take over a bank. Jeff holds a gun to a civilian's head while Moros forces a teller to fill a bag with cash. Hostages lie on the floor, begging for their lives. Moros yells at Jeff, eager to move on to the next robbery. A yellow school bus speeds through the snow, kicking it up in its wake. Moros swerves the vehicle, its tires kicking up debris. A figure in a jester outfit falls to the ground beside a school bus. Cassian stands with his masked crew. He yells that it's time to go home. Cassian delivers a powerful blow as figures scatter behind him. A gloved hand reaches into a container overflowing with dollar bills. Caution holds a stack of dollar bills to his face. He deeply sniffs the money, a blush spreading across his cheeks. Moros clutches stacks of money to his face, inhaling the scent. He declares his plan to use the cash to build a theme park filled with horror and terror. Three figures sprint past a yellow school bus. Cash scatters on the ground in their wake. In the background, two shadowy silhouettes watch them. Jack pounds his tattooed fist against the door, demanding it be opened. A hidden panel slides open. Jack struggles to open a door, looking back impatiently. He yells at Cassian, calling him a fool for taking so long. Tuppen Schiller's expression shifts to curiosity. She asks who the person is. Moros grins from behind his mask, announcing their hostage. Cassian looks out the window. He asks, "And who's she?" A masked man runs off with a wailing child in his arms. He shouts that he has captured the governor's daughter. Two men celebrate inside their vehicle after a successful abduction. They gloat about capturing a man's wife and child, expecting to receive a large ransom. A figure in dark clothing blocks the road. Lyra rushes forward. A shadowy figure grabs a young blonde girl. The child screams in terror as a woman begs for her daughter's release. Cassian grabs Lyra by the throat, screaming. She struggles against his powerful grip. A masked man holds the crying child, Jessica. The woman reaches out for her daughter. A masked man restrains a crying blonde child. The kid struggles and calls out for their mother. The man tells the child to stay still or he will spank them. Lyra snaps her head toward a sudden shout, her eyes widening as the sound becomes a scream. Caution confronts two men, his back to the viewer. One of the men holds Lyra captive. Caution demands they release her. The captor shouts back in disbelief. Someone forcefully grabs Cassian. His eye widens in shock. Cassian grabs the man's head, his masked eyes glowing red. He crushes his grip, screaming for Lyra's release. Cassian confronts Jeff, screaming at him. Lyra lies sprawled on the ground nearby. Cassian's eye narrows, his focus sharpening. A gloved hand fires a pistol into the sky. Two kinds of people with special abilities exist, those who commit crimes driven by their desires. A clown-like figure holds a weapon and smiles. Armed, hooded individuals stand behind them. They are the descendants of the Child of Night, and people call them villains. A character in a jester outfit runs from a school bus, holding a handgun. Another person keeps pace beside them. Voices from the background shout for Ralph and talk about a celebration. A hand seizes the door handle. Kazian is hurled through a glass barrier, shattering it. Moros watches from below with a sinister grin. The clown-like figure looks up in shocked recognition. A sudden force slams into them, simultaneously striking the people standing behind them. Lyra drags a body by the leg. She thinks about the fight against the villains. Moros grabs Kazian by the collar, yanking him forward. His masked eyes glow intensely. Kazian unleashes a powerful force, throwing his assailant backward. He kicks up a strong wind around the school bus. A clown points off panel, his expression furious and shocked. He shouts, "WHO, the hell is that?" Kazian smirks from behind his hand, stating that he's here to take out the trash. Kazian faces a group of figures. A voice reveals they are the descendants of the Child of Day. Kazian smirks confidently. A status window appears, identifying him as Kazian Lee, an S-rank fire psycher and a striker. A voice greets Ralph after a year-long absence. Ralph, a clown-like figure, is completely stunned. He stares, flustered, and questions what Kazian is doing here. Kazian plucks a small metallic object from his ear. Kazian's hand glows with intense, fiery energy. He shouts the spell's name, Flare. An angry clown stands surrounded by shadowy figures. He says they are finally alone, and it is time for the show to begin. Moros grits his teeth in a furious grimace. He shouts, "Damn it, for the lot of you, there's nothing worth recycling." Kazian smirks confidently as he unleashes destructive fire and lightning from his hands. He declares he will burn all of them to ash. Pedestrians walk across a city street. A man in sunglasses talks on his phone in the foreground. A crowd watches a news report on a large public screen. The anchor reports on public outcry, stating a psycher used excessive force on bank robbers. Jack announces the Human Rights Committee has officially sent a request to Lampus, an international psycher organization, to punish Kazian Lee for his acts of ruthless violence. The official request arrives at the Lampus, Washington office. Tuppence Schiller sits in an armchair. She sips tea and holds a clipboard. A gloved hand clenches, crushing a piece of paper. Kazian sits on the couch, his face twisted in frustration. He clenches a crumpled item in his gloved hand. Jeff sits in an armchair, yelling at Kazian. He blames Kazian's recklessness for letting Ralph get away. He adds that even the public has turned its back on them. Kazian sits dejected on the sofa. Kazian sits on the couch, his face wrapped in bandages. He shouts with an agitated expression that his enemies got their hands on the hostage. He is told he should have been more careful. Tuppence Schiller holds a cup, her face in profile. She states that the safety of a hostage comes first. Kazian sits confidently on a sofa, speaking. He says he was confident he could save them unharmed. A hand flicks a lighter open. Tuppence Schiller sits in a chair, holding a clipboard. She instructs the psyker to think rationally and act calmly. Kazian shouts that thinking something is right doesn't make it so. He yells for the other person to look at the consequences, accusing them of being no different from a villain. Kazian leans back on the couch, his expression pensive and silent. Tuppence Schiller sits across from Kazian at a table. He delivers a formal notice, suspending Kazian and warning him to stay out of trouble. Tuppence Schiller walks away down the hall. Jeff watches her leave, remarking that the Iron Witch is as cold as ever. Kazian shakes his head in disbelief. He pictures Jeff and Tuppence Schiller fist-bumping, having become best friends. Kazian looks to the side with a pained expression, thinking he should leave. A loud buzzing sound suddenly starts. Kazian looks at his phone as it rings. The screen shows an incoming call from someone named Jeff. He questions the unfamiliar name. Kazian stands at a vending machine. He greets an off-panel character named Jeff. A red soda can is placed on a metal shelf. An unseen person shouts, "WHH, WHA now, where are you?" Kazian holds a phone to his ear, his eyes wide with shock. He shouts that Rhodes is in Greece. Airplanes and ground vehicles are active on the tarmac at Rhodes International Airport. A coastal town sits on the shoreline. Buildings and a harbor face the calm sea. An ornate, steaming teacup sits on a saucer. Moros thinks the place is beautiful and makes a mental note to thank Jeff. He sits at an outdoor cafe holding a cup. He thinks about Jeff, realizing it has been about 6 months since they last met. Kazian rests his head in his hand, thinking. A large building stands under a bright, cloudy sky. A sign in front of it reads, HC Orphanage. Kazian looks out the window. A large stuffed bear and a dinosaur begin to twitch. He stares in amazement as they start moving on their own. Kazian and 2 other children gaze at a large rock. One child asks another if the object is alive. Jeff smiles and demonstrates his power. He gestures with his hand, causing 2 plush dolls to twitch and move. Kazian clenches his fists with a wide grin. He asks if Jeff will be a psycher, talking about beating up villains and appearing on TV. Jeff scratches the back of his head and smiles, feigning modesty. Jeff radiates light, shouting that Kazian is wrong. He insists that Kazian is cool. Kazian smiles warmly while leaning over a caged creature. Kazian sits in a cafe, his eyes closed as he holds a teacup. He recalls his life 2 years after being sent to an orphanage in the US. He remembers having no worries and misses those days. A gloved hand holds an ornate cup. Kazian stands alone outside a cafe under the setting sun. Kazian checks the time on his phone. The screen shows 7:03 p.m., confirming his appointment is late. Kazian pants heavily, staring at his phone with a worried expression. He gets no answer. He fears something has happened. Kazian, injured, looks up with a startled expression. Jeff urgently calls his name from the background. Kazian stares down at the device in shock. Kazian, his face bloodied and scratched, winces in distress. He shouts for Jeff. Kazian catches a collapsing blonde individual. He breathes heavily, his face filled with shock, and asks if villains did this. Jeff, his face bloodied, tells the other man he shouldn't have called him. The man holding him asks what he's talking about. Moros extends his blood-stained, gloved hand, offering a glowing pendant. He tells them to take it. Kazian kneels, supporting the injured Jeff. He points out Jeff's serious wounds, claims he is fine, and then mentions the necklace. Kazian's eyes widen as he coughs up blood. Kazian stares forward in shock. Jeff, bloodied and frantic, shoves Kazian back. He screams at him to get out immediately, warning that he is in danger too. Jeff yells there is no time for an explanation, confused by the situation. Kazian supports the injured man. He holds a phone to his ear, yelling that he will call an ambulance. Kazian stares at his phone with a confused expression. Kazian walks through a desolate city under a stormy sky. He wears a mask with glowing white eyes and carries a sword. Kazian shouts, "Who's there?" A terrified Jeff peeks out from behind his back. Kazian shoves Moros, sending him reeling backward in surprise. Jeff's eyes widen, his mouth hanging open in shock. A shadowy figure blurs forward, its eyes glowing red. Kazian swings his glowing sword, unleashing a slash of blue energy. Kazian takes a luminous blue energy blast to the chest, his head snapping back from the impact. Kazian stares in shock, his face splattered with blood. A blue light reflects in Kazian's eye. He screams Jeff's name. A single drop falls past her face. Lyra's eye glows with an intense blue light. Kazian struggles to stand, his eyes wide with panic. He reaches a hand forward and screams Jeff's name. Kazian turns suddenly, spotting a silhouette dashing across the rooftops in the distance. He grinds his teeth, his jaw clenched tight. Kazian lunges forward with a furious expression, screaming for his enemy to stop. Lyra plunges into the ocean at the base of the fortified cliff. Kazian kneels in a desolate landscape, visibly strained. A faint energy surrounds him. A figure in a dark suit watches. Kazian breathes heavily, his face covered in bandages. He shouts, "You bastard, was it for revenge?" Kazian stares at the cloaked figure standing on a distant cliff. He shouts, demanding to know if the figure was paid for this. Moros clenches his hand into a fist. Kazian roars, his face twisted with rage. He thrusts his hand forward and unleashes a powerful burst of fire, screaming he will incinerate his enemy. A figure slides their hat back, revealing the lower half of their face. They speak Kazian's name. Kazian's eyes widen in shock. Jack Khalid appears under the moon. A system window displays his information, S-rank psycher, night class. Kazian clenches his jaw, shaking with fury. He glares and yells, "You bastard, why'd you kill Jeff?" Jack stands in profile against the night sky, his expression stern. He states, "I was merely disposing of a traitor." One of the two figures shouts at the third person, questioning what he is talking about. He insists that it's true. Kazian walks past a man, leaving him stunned. He announces they have a witness and proof that Jeff is a killer. Lyra, a woman with white hair, stands as glowing ice shards form in her hand. A system window appears next to her, displaying her S-rank status. Kazian stands with his head bandaged, his back turned. He is accused of also being a suspect of treason. Jack watches the confrontation. Jack glares intently, demanding to know the exact details of their last conversation with Jeff. Jack stares up into the dark, starry night sky. Kazian watches from a distance, his face bandaged. Lyra stands under the starry night sky, manifesting a swirling aura of blue magical energy. Kazian exhales a visible breath against the dark sky. Jeff, a psycher for over 10 years, had never killed a single person. He is now accused of murdering another psycher. Lyra's hand radiates with blue energy. She warns that 2 other top-class psychers are present, telling them not to do anything rash. Jack glares down against the dark, cloudy sky. He delivers a final warning, telling the psycher to act like one. Kazian's mouth curls into a smirk. Jack stands against the night sky, his katana held firmly. He agrees he is a psyker and must act like one. Lyra's eye is wide with calm, rational focus. A figure in red dashes toward Kazian. Kazian grips his sword, ready for the attack. Lyra's blade flashes as she draws it. Jack clashes with his opponent in a blur of motion. He throws a punch, his fist engulfed in fire. Jack delivers a powerful punch, his fist glowing with energy. Kazian swings his sword down, striking the horned adversary in a brilliant, explosive impact. Jack holds his sword forward as it erupts with blue light. Jack activates his skill, Shadow Sword. He wields a glowing blue sword as multiple shadowy blades and blue electricity erupt around him. Lyra unleashes her skill, Cold Blast, and is surrounded by sharp, glowing blue ice shards. Kazian screams in defiance, his eyes glowing red with fury. Lyra unleashes a shattering ice attack. Kazian reacts, exploding with fiery energy to counter her. Kazian uses Flare Dash, bursting forward with fire erupting from his outstretched hand. Kazian is struck in the chest by a bright energy beam. Lyra stands over a fallen figure, her body glowing with magical energy. The person on the ground screams and bleeds heavily. Kazian clutches his bleeding arm, grimacing in pain. He realizes the other psyker is a sniper. Tuppence, Schiller, and Jeff confront the slumped, glowing form of Kazian. They demand his surrender, threatening to aim for his head next if he refuses to cooperate. A massive explosion erupts in a flash of bright light. Dark smoke and glowing embers expand outward. Kazian smirks, thrusting his palm forward. He unleashes a powerful burst of fire and yells the name of his spell. The man's single green eye widens. Kazian unleashes a fiery blast, shouting, "EAT, this." The fiery blast detonates, engulfing both Kazian and Lyra in a massive explosion. Kazian clenches his fist in frustration, red energy flaring around him. Kazian leaps into the air as a fiery explosion erupts behind him. Kazian is struck by an unseen force, recoiling from the impact as blood flies from his mouth. Kazian stares in shock, blood spilling from his chest and mouth. He reaches one hand forward. Kazian tumbles through the air, surrounded by debris and blood. He plummets toward the burning landscape below. A body crashes into the water, sinking beneath the fiery surface as red-tinged bubbles rise from the impact. Kazian sinks into the deep water, bubbles rising around him. He thinks he cannot die like this, wanting revenge on them. Bubbles ascend from the dark water. A men's restroom sign is mounted on a wall. The faucet drips a sparkling liquid into the sink. Kazian kneels by the washing machine and finds a body inside. He realizes the person is not breathing. Kazian's only thought is to run. He turns and dashes away from the scene. A dark liquid churns, filled with rising bubbles. Jack reaches his hand toward Lyra's head. She flinches away from his touch underwater. Kazian screams upwards as water bubbles and a bright light envelop him. Kazian kneels over a toilet, heaving and gasping for breath. Kazian is enveloped by a shower of blue light particles. His eyes glow gold, and the pendant around his neck shines brightly. He gasps in confusion. An institutional hallway is shown, featuring a men's restroom and several closed doors. Moros hears dripping water. He questions his location, only remembering his fall from the cliff. Kazian steps into a puddle, splashing water. He speaks, noticing his own voice sounds different. Kazian looks at his reflection in a mirror. His eyes glow red. Jack is partially submerged in water, reaching his hand forward. Bubbles float around his face as he questions the impulse. Kazian pulls his hand away from his face. His eye glows with an amber iris, surrounded by shimmering blue and purple light. He stares in shock at the transformation. Moros internally questions his reflection. He panics, wondering why he looks like a kid and what happened to his body. Kazian lies with his face half submerged in water, looking disoriented. He concludes this must be a dream and exhales in relief. Kazian touches his hair, his hand emitting a blue glow as water splashes around his head. Kazian stares at his distressed reflection in the mirror. He realizes with frustration that this is not a dream. Kazian's hand shoots out and grabs an unseen object. Pain explodes behind Kazian's eyes. He squeezes them shut and cries out in agony. Kazian reels as visions flood his mind. He sees flashes of memories, smiling friends, sinister figures, and a person collapsing. He realizes with a shock that he is Gangu Guan, currently in Korea. The blue pendant on Moros's chest glows. He questions the unfamiliar memories flooding his mind, demanding to know their source. Kazian's golden eye snaps open, wide with shock. Kazian stands in a public restroom, his head whipping around. He senses another presence and yells out. The pendant around Kazian's neck glows. Dark energy erupts from it, swirling around him as he looks down in shock. Moros appears as a swirling, dark form with a single glowing blue eye. He radiates an intense purple aura and introduces himself as a mighty soul from ancient times. Causian stares forward, his eyes wide with shock. Causian points in shock at a one-eyed shadow entity that emerged from his necklace. He demands to know what it is. The creature, flustered, states its name is Moros. A single eye glows from the darkness. A voice says, "But that's beside the point, you must have many questions." The unseen figure grins. Causian glares forward, demanding, "Don't you want to know?" The glass windows of a modern school building reflect the bright sky. A voice questions being brought back to life. Another yells back, asking how many times they have to confirm that they did. Causian stands outside a school and speaks to the floating creature, Moros. He compliments Moros' fluent Korean. Moros explains he lived in Korea before being adopted. Causian glares down at the street, panting in frustration. He curses aloud. Causian stares in confusion. He realizes he died and then came back to life. He shouts that none of it makes sense. The shadow entity reveals Jeff gave it to Causian for his protection. Causian's eyes widen in shock at the news. Causian thinks back to what Jeff said in Rhodes. He remembers an injured and angry Jeff holding up a necklace. Causian exhales a visible sigh. Causian stands with his back to the viewer, facing a building as a small, one-eyed shadow floats beside him. He tries to remember what Jeff was looking for, recalling it was some kind of sword. Moros, the mark known as the Sword of Annihilation, appears. The one-eyed, shadowy entity hovers, glowing blue within crackling green and yellow energy. An ancient golden sword glows between two armored figures. It was forged long ago during the War of Nith. The spirit questions how Causian could know of ancient events. Causian boasts he is a mighty soul from ancient times. The spirit calls it nonsense and tells him to be quiet and listen. Causian's brow furrows in anger. Causian walks outside, looking at his phone. A small, one-eyed entity floats beside him. The entity questions how it can trust Causian, revealing it sacrificed half its power to bring him back to life. Causian looks at his phone with a concerned expression. He reads about a sacrifice and dismisses the idea. Causian's eye widens in a sudden glare. A news article accuses Causian Lee of corruption, claiming he accepted black money. The report states an organization called LAMP eliminated the rogue psycher in a secret operation. A second headline announces the death of Jeff Malik, who fell fighting the traitor Causian. The world mourns Jeff, hailing him as a true hero. Causian stares at his phone, his expression twisting in shock. He reads an article accusing him of killing Jeff. Causian's hands tremble as he holds his smartphone. He reads a news article branding him a traitor. The report praises Jeff Malik as a hero who died fighting him. Causian observes a glowing memory. It shows his younger, joyful self with another adult in a home. He thinks, "What is this nonsense?" Causian stands as a hooded silhouette, his eyes glowing in the dark. He brandishes his sword against a bright light from behind. A fist clenches, glowing with purple energy. Causian's shadowy form trembles as purple energy flares from his single eye. He screams, declaring his innocence and accusing Lampus of framing him for Jeff's murder. Cassian's eye glows, crackling with uncontrolled blue electrical energy. Moros yells at him to calm down. Causian erupts in a burst of blue and teal electrical energy. Shards of power crackle around his head. Causian's eye glows with a brilliant blue light, surrounded by electrical energy. Teal and purple energy streaks through the darkness. Causian screams as blue energy engulfs his body, questioning what is happening. A blue gauntlet materializes, its sharp claws extending from swirling energy. Causian's eye glows with intense blue energy. Causian stares at his arms in horror. Dark clawed hands glowing with energy burst through his skin. He looks on in disbelief at his own monstrous transformation. A voice screams from within a modern building. Causian stands with a baseball bat over two squatting men. He tells them to stop whining, stating that their target will be there soon as he lets out a heavy sigh. Jeff runs, panting heavily as he approaches Causian from behind. Jack and his companion crouch down, sneering at a figure in the distance. They call the running person a pathetic loser. The purple-haired man leans in, demanding to know if he checked. Jack pants for air, then hesitantly confirms that he did. Jack's eyes widen in shock as the man beside him maintains a serious expression. The bathroom is empty. Causian grips a baseball bat, questioning a timid student against a fence. He demands to know if the student is sure. Uchon questions the absence of the police. He realizes no ambulance has arrived either. He confirms he didn't see anyone. Causian grits his teeth, his face twisting in rage. Causian furiously confronts the man in glasses. He demands to know why he was told someone had died when they were still breathing. Causian stares down at the body in shock, his mind reeling. He is certain the person wasn't breathing. The purple-haired man holds out a black bag. Causian snatches it and immediately dashes away. Causian confronts the person holding the baseball bat. He shouts that his panic was for nothing and blames them for everything. A hand holding a golden tool pokes a green disc on another person's clothing. Cassian stares down a man holding a baseball bat. A voice asks what he plans to do about him. A voice asks him what he thinks. A person drinks through a straw. Cassian narrows his eyes, his lips twisting into a smirk. Cassian slumps against a rooftop wall as dark energy swirls around him. A distant figure hovers in the sky, taunting him for hiding. Cassian glares at the shadowy entity. He shouts, "Enough of your crap." Cassian confronts the shadowy figure of Moros. He yells, demanding to know why he became a villain. The entity, a silhouette with one glowing eye, sighs at his temper. A dark, fin-like object drifts in deep water, surrounded by rising bubbles. A heavy chain shatters, emitting a brilliant blue light. The real Gangui was supposed to be reborn as a villain. Cassian stands as a dark aura splits his body down the middle. One side appears normal while the other radiates chaotic energy, his eye glowing with fire. Cassian's golden eye widens in shock, a single drop of sweat rolling down his temple. Cassian asks Moros if his revival means a stupid fate has been passed down to him. Moros confirms he is correct. Cassian stares forward with a wide, unsettling grin. He begins to laugh. Cassian slumps against the wall in anguish. He remembers his past as a top-class psycher, questioning if he is now a villain. Lyra's hand shakes, vibrating with immense power. It transforms into a monstrous dark claw that radiates a destructive blue energy. Cassian furiously slams his glowing blue fist into the ground, shattering the concrete. Cassian screams, his face twisting in anguish. Cassian screams in a furious rage, demanding to know why he was brought back. He yells at himself to shut up as dark energy explodes from his body. A clown grins widely, clutching stacks of money. A glowing blue gem floats beside him. A voice speaks, "I'm sure you feel it too right now." Cassian's eyes widen in rage, a blue aura swirling behind him. A shadowy Cassian with glowing blue eyes confronts Moros. Moros floats before him, a dark, one-eyed entity with ominous tendrils. Moros tells Cassian he can only control the power for now. He warns that as Cassian's rage grows, it may become too much to handle. A shout cuts off a warning. Cassian sits with his head in his hand, contemplating. He accepts his identity as a villain and considers his next move. A hand in a dark, blue-accented glove grabs Cassian by the neck. Cassian's eye emits an intense blue glow. He screams, "You must live on." Cassian stares up at the sky. Moros, a single-eyed entity, floats between the buildings. He states this is what Jeff would have said. Cassian shouts in shock. Cassian smirks, a dark, smoky aura emanating from him as he recounts Jeff's regret. Jeff lies wounded as a dark, hooded entity with a single glowing eye looms over him. He knew his death was near, but he didn't choose to find a way out of it. A gloved hand holds a glowing, ornate blue pendant on a delicate chain. Cassian grimaces in pain, his clawed hand trembling. He exhales, vowing not to let the sacrifice go to waste. A modern building with glass windows stands under a blue sky. A voice calls out for Cassian. A large, one-eyed shadow looms over a tiny, enraged Cassian. The entity tells him to remain calm, but Cassian screams at it to stop bossing him around. The entity threatens to prevent him from returning to his human form. Cassian slumps against a wall, dark gauntlets on his hands. A smoky shadow figure hovers next to him as he relents. "Fine, I'll do it." A small, dark eye-like entity appears in the sky. It introduces itself as Moros, the mighty soul. Cassian glares to the side. He demands to know what his opponent is and tells them to stop the bullshit about a mighty soul. Moros, a massive, dark entity with a single eye, hovers over the cityscape. He asks if his listener truly wants to know. A voice retorts, questioning why else they would ask. An unseen person tells Cassian he will learn how to bring someone back to life. He must first help them find the Sword of Annihilation. Cassian sighs in frustration, tired of hearing the same offer. Cassian leans against a railing, staring into the distance. He thinks about the Sword of Annihilation, wondering if it's linked to Jeff's death. Cassian lifts his gaze, his uncertainty replaced by conviction. A voice calls out from off-panny, shouting, "Loser," at Cassian. 3 shadowy figures appear and confront Cassian. One of them lets out a mocking laugh. Cassian appears, flanked by 2 men. He grins maliciously and shouts, "Look who we have here, the bastard lives." A modern, multi-story building with glass windows stands under a clear blue sky. Trees surround the structure. 3 female students in the hallway stop and stare, their faces showing a mix of surprise and confusion. Uchin walks down a hallway as female students whisper in admiration. A display identifies him as Uchin Kim, a psycher trainee of unknown rank with fire abilities. Uchan walks down the school hallway. Other students turn their heads to watch him pass. Kaujin taps his smartphone screen, answering a call from Daewon Lee Seonbae. Yukon presses the phone to his ear, his expression serious as he speaks to his Seonbae. Female students huddle in the hallway, whispering amongst themselves. One girl stands apart from the group, turning to answer their unspoken question. Kaujin's intense blue eye fixes on them with a sharp gaze. Uchon holds the phone to his ear, listening intently with a serious expression. Uchon says he'll call back later. He looks out the window over the city, spotting figures on a distant rooftop. Kaujin stands alone, facing 3 men. One opponent grips a baseball bat. Kaujin stands outside, looking intently to his right with a serious expression. Jack's eye narrows. He sees the ghostly figures of bullies. They shove another student into a washing machine, smiling menacingly. Kaujin stands outdoors, confused. The shadowy entity, Moros, floats beside him. Moros tells him not to worry, explaining that other people cannot see him. Moros confronts Kaujin, pointing an accusing finger. He yells at him, struggling to catch his breath. Kaujin stands calmly, facing the outburst. A hand slides open a pack of cigarettes. Kaujin glares, a cigarette in his mouth and a scar across his nose. He holds a cigarette pack and demands to know why the person is hiding. Jack raises a baseball bat over another man. The man flinches, clutching a small device. A third person watches with a distressed expression. Jack demands to know if he is done. Ushan's face is obscured by shadows. He says he is in a really bad mood today. Kaujin states that beating up kids isn't his thing. He declares he will make an exception for them. Moros, a single-eyed shadow, floats beside Kaujin. He warns Kaujin that even in human form, villains are much stronger than average humans. Kaujin looks out over the cityscape, his expression serious. He interrupts Moros mid-sentence, stating he already knows he must control his power. A figure strides forward. Kaujin angrily confronts the man. He yells, demanding to know what he's muttering about, and calls him a freak. Moros's eyes glow with an intense orange light. Kaujin's eyes are wide and bloodshot. His brow is furrowed in rage. Uchon lunges forward, screaming as he throws a punch. Kaujin recoils violently from a powerful blow. Jeff drives his fist directly into Kaujin's face. Kaujin's head snaps back from the force of the blow. Kaujin looks distressed, a cigarette in his hand. Jack stands behind him, holding a baseball bat over his shoulder with a serious expression. Kaujin clenches his fists and takes a ready stance, staring forward intently. Kaujin stands over his defeated opponent on the rooftop. 2 others watch in disbelief as the body collapses. Kaujin stares in wide-eyed shock and fury, a cigarette hanging from his lips. Kaujin charges forward, raising his staff over his head for an attack. Kaujin's eyes flare with an intense golden light. He stomps his foot down, debris scattering from the impact. Kaujin raises his arm, blocking an incoming punch. A burst of energy flares from the point of impact. Kaujin lunges forward and delivers a forceful punch. Jack swings the baseball bat, striking Kaujin. The blow sends Kaujin falling to the ground. Jack's eyes widen in horror and disbelief. A small object falls from his open mouth. Jeff and Uchon lie on the ground, knocked out. Kaujin stands at an opening, looking out over the city. Jack averts his gaze, sweat beading on his face. Kaujin steps up behind another man, taunting him. Kaujin smirks widely, baring all his teeth. Someone scoffs, questioning the concept of guilt. Jack erupts in a loud, mocking laugh, his eyes wide with a sinister grin. A man with purple hair taunts Kaujin, mocking him for beating 2 weaklings. Kaujin stares back silently. Kaujin's eyes and fist begin to glow. He clenches his hand. "You need to be taught a lesson," he declares. "My fists will do the teaching." Several small figures stand on the green roof of a large building on a school campus. Kaujin charges forward at high speed. Jack bursts into motion, dropping into a combat stance. Kaujin sprints at his opponent. The other man dashes forward to meet the charge. Kaujin throws a punch. Jack ducks beneath the blow. A character in a school uniform punches another character directly in the face, sending him reeling backward. Lyra blasts forward, a blur of motion amidst flying debris. Kaujin's eyes glow red as he throws a punch that blurs with speed. Kaujin drives a glowing punch into Jeff, creating a shockwave on impact. Kaujin screams, his mouth open and his eyes wide with agony. An unseen force impacts him, throwing him backward. Lyra gags, her head snapping back. She clutches her throat and collapses. Kaujin stands in the city. He looks to the side with a serious expression. Kaujin's foot looms over Tuppence Schiller. He asks if Tuppence feels guilty. Tuppence grimaces in agony, telling Kaujin to go to hell. Kaujin grabs Jeff by the collar. He states the lesson won't sink in if he holds back. Kaujin glares, his eyes glowing red with fury. Jack's eyes widen in horror. He clamps a hand over his mouth in distress. Kaujin grabs the aggressor's arm. He asks if the boy has had enough. Uchan stands with his hands in his pockets as leaves float around him. Moros' eyes widen in terror as sweat drips down his face. He screams Ushan's name. A boy with dark, spiky hair shoves the purple-haired boy back. He demands to know who he is and tells him to mind his business. The purple-haired boy argues back, questioning the point of beating on someone who is no match for him. A red-haired boy watches them from the background. Kazian clutches his neck, shouting in disbelief. He is furious at the suggestion that he is weaker than a loser. Kazian grinds his teeth, his face contorting with fury. Jack lunges at Kazian, screaming as he throws a punch. Kazian stands perfectly still, unfazed by the attack. Kazian instantly pivots on his foot. The dark-haired man drives his fist into Kazian's face, drawing a spray of blood. A figure flies backward, blurring from the speed. Kazian grabs Ushan's shoulder and shouts that it's enough. Ushan glares back at him with intense fury. Lyra's eyes snap to the side as she turns. Kazian's eye widens in shocked realization. A glowing energy blast slams into Kazian's face, snapping his head back from the impact. Kazian brings his arm to his face, his eyes narrowing in confusion as a faint blue aura glows around his head. Ukan throws a punch. Kazian firmly blocks the blow with his forearm. Kazian unleashes a flurry of rapid blows on the red-haired man. Kazian's eyes widen in shock. A figure's legs blur with speed. One foot drives forward, kicking up a spray of dirt and rock. Kazian throws a punch, and Yuchen ducks to avoid it. Kazian's eyes widen in surprise. He struggles to track an opponent moving at incredible speed. Moros bursts forth as a blur of dark smoke, a single eye glowing from within. A voice warns Kazian that his opponent is a psycher, too dangerous to fight in human form. He clenches his fist and yells in disbelief. Uchen throws a swift punch. Kazian drives his fist into Yushan's face. Blood splatters. Kazian jerks his head back, a scratch suddenly appearing on his cheek. He shouts in frustration. A multi-story building stands beneath a clear blue sky. Ukan confronts Kazian on a rooftop. They stand opposite one another, the city visible behind them. Kazian stares intently forward with his fists clenched, a fresh scar on his cheek. Ukan clenches his fists with a determined expression. He realizes his opponent is a psyker. Kazian's intense blue eye stares forward. Ukan holds up his hand, telling Kazian they should stop. He says nothing good will come from them fighting. Kazian reacts with shocked agitation. Uchan holds out a band-aid patterned with cartoon animal faces. An unseen person offers a decorative shard to Kazian. They inform him that his face is bleeding, and he stares back with a serious expression. Kazian looks to the side with an intense gaze. Uchan stares in the opposite direction. Jeff snatches the card from the other person's hand. Kazian watches the other man walk away, his figure shrinking into the distance. Ukan stands before a city skyline, wearing a white shirt and tie. Jack, Kazian, and another hunter stare off-panel in disbelief. One of them questions how a single person defeated 3 opponents by himself. Moros' blue eyes dart to the side. Uchan feels a throb from inside his chest. A modern cityscape stands under a clear sky. A sign for a Dream PC's cafe glows. Inside, several individuals are focused on their computer screens. Kazian sits in a cubicle, partially visible at his terminal. Kazian presses a key on the keyboard. The screen displays an out-of-access message, showing his ID has been deleted from the net. Kazian clutches his head, his glowing orange eyes directed at the floor. This really sucks. A cityscape sits under a clear blue sky, with sun rays breaking through scattered clouds. Lyra stands against a building, looking down at a checkered pathway. She sees a small, dark figure and recognizes him as Moros. Caution leans against a wall in an alley, eating a burger while looking at his phone. A small, one-eyed shadow entity floats next to him. He asks how it knew the man with pink hair was a psyker. Kazian glares intensely as a shadowy, one-eyed entity materializes beside him. The entity says it could sense the other man's power when he touched Kazian. Kazian holds a yellow crystal in his hand. He remarks on its usefulness, then claims he can do much more. Moros floats in the air before a building. The amorphous, shadowy entity has a single white eye. The Mighty Soul explains he is the Mighty Soul because he likes delving into the world of knowledge, but his thought trails off. A dark, glowing eye in a wispy form floats before Kazian. It tells him to change into a villain's form so it can analyze his skills. Caution stands outdoors holding a smartphone and a crumpled wrapper. He stares off to the side, lost in thought. Kazian stands with his back to the viewer, facing the shadowy entity Moros. The single-eyed being floats before him and speaks, dismissing Kazian's obvious lack of interest. Kazian crushes the yellow material in his hands. Kazian looks down at the crumpled, glowing object in his hands. He says a villain's power is all he has right now. Cassian holds a small golden object while standing next to a mass of swirling dark energy. He questions what he needs to do, considering the difficult concept that villains are born from an inability to control their desires and emotions. Moros' glowing eye opens from within a swirl of dark shadows. He states that anger is the trigger for turning into a villain. Cassian clenches his fist tightly, his eyes wide with anger. Jack releases a blue aura. Fragmented memories flash around him. He screams, his mouth stretched wide in agony. Cassian unleashes a furious roar, vowing to kill every last bastard from Lampus. A shadowy figure beside him recoils. Cassian screams, his face contorted with fury. He demands to know what is happening, roaring that he has become angry. Cassian stares blankly ahead. The city skyline stretches out under a bright, clear sky. The villain goes by Blaster. He makes bombs explode and watches the results. A gloved hand points to a tablet. The screen displays a mugshot of a man with spiky pink hair and a malicious grin. An off-screen speaker states the man entered Korea 2 days ago and was last seen in Gadam. Uchan stares at his tablet with a serious expression. He reads that one person is responsible for 102 deaths and injuries. Moros bites down, shattering the hard yellow object with his teeth. Jack considers Daewon Lee. He knows close combat is not his opponent's specialty. Daewon's real talent lies in making bombs, which is a major nuisance. Uchan drives the car, calling their target an outrageous piece of work. He says the man is out of control and declares that they must obliterate all villains. Jack sits in the passenger seat, chewing his food. Ushan's blue eyes glow with a determined light. He declares that they are criminals and a danger to society, unable to control their desires. He vows to find and eliminate them all before they can cause trouble. The driver tells Uchan he gets serious whenever they talk about villains. He says cybers fight in the name of justice. A voice asks if this is their duty. A man in reflective eyewear smirks. Uchan sits in the driver's seat, addressing Jack. He declares himself the psycher who will fight the villains. He tells the trainee Jack to back him up. Urban buildings stand under a cloudy sky, one of them marked with a dental clinic sign. Cassian stares at a glowing blue holographic interface. Cassian reads his full bio, compiled by a power analysis on the holographic screen. It details his trigger, skills, and magic points. He thinks it's like being in a game. Cassian stares at a glowing system interface. It displays 2 main skills, Shadow Slicer and Self-Heal. A voice confirms he can use them immediately. Cassian reacts with surprise. Glowing blue energy emanates from his eye. Crystalline structures form over the wound on his arm. Cassian looks at his clawed arm and a holographic skill display. He asks the shadowy entity if the skill can regrow a lost limb. The entity replies that it depends on his maximum magic points. A system message displays a hidden skill, status, and 300 magic points. The message explains the hidden skill is not yet activated and will be granted upon leveling up. Moros expresses shock. He realizes he only has 300 magic points, a drastic decrease from the 1,100 he possessed as a psycher. Cassian confronts the floating, one-eyed creature. He questions his own potential to bring about the apocalypse, admitting he feels too weak for the task. The creature retorts, that's why it's called potential. Moros materializes as a shadowy form with a single large eye. He asks if humans don't always say no pain, no gain, and states that without sufficient effort, potential will be wasted. Cassian stares at the holographic power analysis. He asks if it can be used to see other people's powers. Moros confirms it can. Cassian's shadowy power manifests as a single-eyed figure. He explains it is limited to 3 uses a day. Any more will cause an overload, forcing him to sleep for half a day. Cassian considers the half-day time frame. A shadowy, distressed entity hovers behind him. Cassian stands in an alleyway, looking at the floating creature. He asks how to activate his skills, wondering aloud if he has to shout the skill name like in a video game. Moros begins to materialize against a brick wall, his form a shadowy mass with a single, large white eye. Cassian unleashes a clawed blue energy attack, causing an explosion that sends debris flying. Cassian stares in stunned disbelief as a small, dark, eye-like shadow entity floats beside him. A shadowy, clawed appendage bursts from the darkness, glowing with blue energy. Cassian reaches out in surprise and touches it. Cassian inspects the shadow sword with surprise. He notes that, although it is a shadow, it feels like a real, extremely sharp sword. Moros, a shadowy entity with a single eye, floats in an alleyway. He is surprised, thinking it would take a whole day for his target to use the skill, but he learned it immediately. Cassian taps the dark construct with his clawed hand, testing its solidity. He wonders if this is the potential Jeff saw. He notes how solid it is, and considers using it as a shield. He knows that villains can design their own outfits and weapons. Cassian stands calmly as blue, circuit-like energy emanates from his body. The energy forms into sharp, claw-like gauntlets covering his hands. He states this will be enough. Kazian glares, angered by the creature's comment on his fashion. He tells it to shut up. The sun sets over the city. A department store advertises an open event with a banner, and an escape room sign glows on a building. Kazian walks down a city street as it gets dark. Moros floats beside him and asks where he is going. Kazian replies that he is going home. Moros stands with a serious expression as a dark, one-eyed entity floats beside him. Kazian looks to the side with a serious expression. He states that Gangu has a family. Lyra looks forward with a faint smile. She explains that his parents are gone, but he lives with his sister. Kazian and Lyra walk away down the street. He asks if she plans to see the sister, then states he should be the one to go. Kazian recalls Gangu's past. A younger Gangu stands with his sister and a small boy against a cityscape. Though destined to become a villain, Gangu cared deeply for his sister. Kazian walks away as two people watch. A dark entity follows him, shouting. It asks if he feels guilty, screaming that Kazian blamed it for the death. The attack detonates in a massive explosion. Kazian's gaze intensifies, his focus absolute. Kazian watches a building collapse, and a crowd of people screams while fleeing the destruction. Kazian stares forward, his golden eyes wide with shock. He reacts in disbelief. A skyscraper is engulfed in smoke and fire. The structure rumbles as deep cracks spread across its exterior. Civilians scream and flee in panic. Kazian stands motionless in the street, enveloped by a smoky, glowing aura. Kazian stands among a shouting crowd as people yell that a villain has taken a mother and child hostage. Uchan turns his head sharply, his expression grim. Kazian dashes forward, his eye glowing as his body becomes a blur of motion. Kazian sprints through a ruined city street as a massive dark orb floats above him. Kazian sprints forward at high speed. A small, one-eyed shadow entity runs alongside him. Kazian clenches his fist, glaring up at Moros' giant eye. He declares that he will become a villain too. Kazian looks away with a shocked and urgent expression. He yells that the listener, a former psycher, should know villains are forbidden from attacking their own kind. Sparks and debris fly through the air between large industrial buildings at twilight. A massive, glowing purple eye appears in the dark. It delivers a warning, telling him not to mess with other villains now that he has become one. Jeff warns Kazian he could make enemies of them all. He says this will happen before Kazian can take his revenge on Lampus. 3 shadowy figures with glowing eyes and mouths emerge from the darkness. A foot in a white sneaker shoots forward. Kazian stands before a damaged, multi-story building. A shadowy aura with glowing particles surrounds the structure. Kazian looks forward with a determined expression. He is bathed in a fiery orange glow with embers floating around him. He accepts what is to come. Moros' single eye widens in surprise. The entrance to a building is shattered. Cracks spiderweb across the walls, and glowing embers float amidst the debris. Moros floats inside the ruined space. He is a large, shadowy mass with a single eye. Kazian hears that a mother and child have been taken hostage. He walks purposefully down the damaged hallway, his small floating companion beside him. Kazian ascends the crumbling stairs as a dark, swirling energy follows him. He thinks to himself that he knows they are in trouble, and questions turning a blind eye. Kazian speaks with conviction, his eyes glowing in the light. Moros manifests as a dark blue, flame-like entity. Swirling shadows surround him as his single yellow eye glows. Kazian sits on the rocky shore of a lake, staring out over the water at sunset. A small, dark entity hovers beside him. Jeff holds an open locket. Inside is a photograph of a young Cassian with an older, blonde-haired man. Kazian taps his foot on the ground. He turns his head, his expression set with determination. Lyra smirks, her face bathed in a bright glow. She says, "Well, if you insist, Jeff." Kazian stands ready, his expression determined. A blue power glows from his hand and the pendant on his chest. Above him, a one-eyed spirit floats, urging him to transform.